Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much indeed for coming, and I hope you find this interesting. I'm now going to take my glasses off because otherwise I can't read the screen, but now I can't see you. So that's the problems of aging. This talk builds on and develops this article that is in this month's Private Hire Monthly. Copies available on the National Private Hire and Taxi Association stand, so I'd urge you to pick it up. It's also digitally available, but you can actually take one home to read on the way back when you're not driving. So, national standards. How can we get national standards? Well, there's a very, very easy solution. Everybody agrees they're necessary. There is, I think, complete consensus, as we saw in the last session, that we need national standards for drivers, operators, and vehicles. Despite that consensus, nothing is happening from central government. The Transport Minister told myself and Sue Nelson, the Institute's Executive Officer, last March, that's March 23, there would be no movement until after the next election. I leave it to you to decide what the future of the next election is. I'm not a political animal. But however you cut this, I can't see central government introducing national standards for years. So what's the solution? Well, we can lobby our MPs. You can hope for action after the election. What else is there? Well, this is the solution. Local government can actually solve this itself in relation to private hire. How? Firstly, identify a local authority that has a large number of licenses that it issues, large number of drivers, operators, and vehicles licensed by that authority. Ensure that authority has a robust system. Ensure it has good standards. It needs to be approached to see if it's prepared to license all private hire drivers, operators, and vehicles across the whole of England and Wales. Or every other local authority stops licensing private hire vehicles, drivers, and operators. Blimey, can this work? Identify an authority with a large number of licenses. There are authorities that already do this. There's no doubt about that. Ensure they have a robust system. If they issue large numbers, they probably already have a good administrative system. Ensure it has good standards. Well, that may be more difficult to agree because those standards can't be the highest possible achievable. But equally, they should be a great deal better than the lowest. This is to avoid and remove the drive to the bottom. Approach that authority to see if it is prepared to license everybody. Now, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. If they already license a lot, it's just going to be an expansion of their system. And all the other authorities stop licensing private hire. Well, why on earth would they do that? To achieve these national standards. We've had, 10, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, I've been in this game 35 years now, of hand-wringing. And it is no more than that. And sometimes what I would describe as crocodile tears about how awful it is that a neighbouring authority licensed lousy vehicles or drivers that have been refused or revoked by another authority. And that hand-wringing hasn't achieved anything. Okay, we've got the NR3S, that's helped, but authorities, in some cases, and it is only in some cases, are very slow to update the information. And other authorities, having got the information, still ignore it. So if we really want national standards, and as I say, everybody says they do, so unless they're going to change their minds remarkably quickly, that seems to be a given. This is how it can be done. So how does the law work? Well, a private hire operator can advertise their services anywhere. They're not restricted to doing so within the district in which they're licensed. A private hire booking can be made for a journey to travel anywhere, starting anywhere, finishing anywhere. It doesn't have to start in, pass through, or finish in the district in which those licenses were issued. That booking can be made by anybody located anywhere. I can stand in Newcastle upon Tyne and make a booking with a private hire operator licensed in Basildon. That Basildon operator will provide a Basildon private hire vehicle and driver, but that journey can take me from Newcastle to Blyth. Quite lawful. The operator must utilise drivers and vehicles licensed by the same authority. The trinity of private hire licences, as the Skyline case said, the triple licensing lock, as the DFT call it in the statutory standards, I simply say all three licenses must match. So what's the mechanism for doing this? Firstly, to identify a principal authority. Secondly, that principal authority must accept the role. I mean, obviously they can't have it forced upon them. This is going to be quite a big thing for them. And all other local authorities agree this. Now, in an ideal world, that's every other local authority. I'll come back to that in a minute. How does it work with licenses then? Well, a local authority under the Act must license a private hire operator and a private hire driver unless they are not satisfied that that applicant is a fit and proper person. So there is no way they can refuse to simply say, we're not going to license drivers, we're not going to license operators. But, and this is the key, every local authority has a discretion as to whether or not to license private hire vehicles. And they can simply say, we ain't going to license any private hire vehicles. So if they're not going to license any private hire vehicles, there are no vehicles that those drivers that they must license can drive, because you can only drive a vehicle licensed by the same authority. So all the local authorities, except that principal authority, refuse to license private hire vehicles. We go back to the trinity of licenses. All journeys must be undertaken using principal authority licenses, because they're the only ones who will be licensing drivers, vehicles, and operators under the same authority's licensing regime. Now, you could still have local private hire operators if there was the demand for that, but they would all have to subcontract every booking they received to the principal authority, to a private hire operator licensed by the principal authority to fulfill that booking with the trinity of licenses. Vehicles can be tested in the local areas. Drivers can be verified and assessed in the local areas by the local authority officers acting for the principal authority. Those costs would then be recharged to the principal authority. Bear in mind, the principal authority is the one that is going to take in all the license fees. In those local authority areas, all the local authority officers in the local authority area are placed at the disposal of the principal authority under the provisions of the Local Government Act 1972 and are appointed as authorised officers of the principal authority, so they can undertake enforcement within the local authority area for vehicles and drivers licensed by the principal authority, which may be several hundred miles away. All those costs of enforcement can be recharged to that principal authority by the local authority. Under the Safeguarding and Road Safety Act, the Taxis and Private Hire Vehicles Safeguarding and Road Safety Act of 2022, all English local authorities must report concerns about drivers to the principal authority, because that's the licensing authority. And they could also, although it's not within the statute, there's no reason why they couldn't do it, report any concerns they may have about operators and vehicles. The local authority would still be the body that prosecuted for example, illegal standing or applying for hire within its district, because that's where the offence is committed. There is no reason why TfL couldn't be involved in this. It would make more sense, but because they do have different legislation and it's a different operation, if you like, it could remain an island. That is a matter for negotiation. So can this work, or is this just some flight of fancy? Yes, it can. What are the advantages of it? Well, the principal authority would need to recruit more staff. That would be a significant increase in jobs. That may be an area of deprivation, depends which principal authority steps up to the plate. And that would be at no cost to the taxpayer. Good jobs at local authority salaries, local authority standards, at no cost to the taxpayer. That has got to be attractive to any local politician. The local authorities, the outlier local authorities, maintain their staff. There is no reason why anybody would lose their job, because they are now completely funded by the principal authority to undertake the enforcement work in relation to private hire. They will be required for the Hackney carriage side, because that is entirely local, to undertake that for their authority. Again, in relation to private hire, no cost to that authority, all recharged to the principal authority. That would lead to increased enforcement for both private hire and Hackney carriages, for the benefit of everybody. Those of you who comply with the rules will see that those who don't comply with the rules are having action taken against them. It can, as we've already heard, lead to, for example, funding the police, and so on. And because of the economies of scale that this would bring, there would undoubtedly be reduced costs to the trade. The differences between licence fees, even in neighbouring authorities, is staggering. When Greater Manchester was trying to coordinate its Hackney carriage and private hire licensing approach, one of the big sticking points was fees. And if you look at that report, those discrepancies, those differences were stunning. There's no other way about it. This would be one fee for an operator's licence, one fee for a driver's licence, one fee for a vehicle licence across the country, because there's only one licensing authority. So what are the disadvantages? Well, there's a loss of local democratic control. Do the voting public really care where their private hire licences are issued? Many of you will say yes. A lot of you may say no. Ask the public, and they probably won't even know what you're talking about. But there needs to be a democratic oversight. It shouldn't just be one authority that steps up to the plate and says, we're going to be the principal authority, whose councillors have the say. So, I would suggest there is a creation of an oversight board. That would be a joint board within the meaning of the Local Government Act 72, and that would be comprised of a representative from each English region and one from Wales, nominated by the authorities within that region. Those members of the oversight board would be appointed for 3 years, and they would approve the principal authority's policy. Not all authorities will want to join in. There will always be those who say, no, we're not doing this. We want our own people, we want our own licences. Our standards are higher than the principal authority, for example. Fine, but to be honest, that would be no overall loss. I would like to think every authority will say, this is the best idea since sliced bread, we're on it. I know they won't. Hell's bells, you can't get two authorities that are supposedly doing joint working to agree on a joint taxi policy. So there will be a lot who don't like it. But to be honest, that doesn't necessarily matter. Why doesn't it necessarily matter? Because if a few join up, I think possibly even as few as a dozen authorities say, actually, this isn't a bad idea. It's what we've been asking for, we can do it. We're going to benefit as the local authority. Our citizens will benefit because there will be this common standard. You won't get the sheds coming in from outside because it's a good standard. Then I suspect there may then become a domino effect. So will it work? Well, it is going to need a lot of cooperation. I fully accept that. It's going to require a lot of compromises because it won't be the standard everybody wants. But as long as it's a decent standard, it's an achievable standard, and it's a good standard, the fact it isn't the absolute standard is something we're going to have to accept. It will need local authorities to accept that this is better than the current situation. And I go back to where I was a few minutes ago. This is awful. We've got to do something about cross-border enforcement. This is dreadful. Why can all these vehicles from elsewhere come and operate in our area? Because the law says they can. Now, whether that's right or not is a matter for discussion, but that's what the law says. So we can't do anything about that. The government have said they're not going to do anything about cross-border enforcement. About cross-border activity. That was the conclusion that they came to after the consultation in 2019. They're not going to give us any cross-border enforcement powers until after the next election. So, is this better than the current situation? In relation to the public, do they want a specific local private hire vehicle? Now, in some cases, they might do, because in some cases, in some areas, for example, CCTV is mandatory. And the more enlightened public think that's a good idea. I feel safer in a vehicle with CCTV. I know the driver feels safer in a vehicle with CCTV. That's what I want. So I do understand that. But I think, again, that is, very sadly in my view, a very small proportion of the public. Because in my experience, and I don't know whether you echo this, the vast majority of the public, especially when pissed and stoned, simply want to go home. And they will get into anything that turns up and says, here, I'm a taxi. They don't look at the plate. They don't look at the driver's badge. And then wonder why they end up dead in a skip. Will the public accept better, consistent standards? Why wouldn't they? Why on earth would they say, no, actually, I'd like to have my local vehicles that are just shit heaps, if you'll pardon the expression, driven by drivers who have scraped through? That seems like a better idea to me. Again, they may do when they're pissed and stoned, but if they're actually thinking about it sensibly, if parents are thinking about how their kids are going to get around, how their elderly parents are going to get around, this has got to be, surely, a better solution. And will that outweigh any local loyalty? I would hope it will. But, ultimately there's nothing as stupid as the great British public en masse. So to conclude, ultimately this is all a question of will. Are the problems and concerns that are expressed day in, day out about cross-border activity, about a lack of national standards, sufficient to lead to a consensus by local authorities accepting the inevitable compromises that would require? That, I really think, is the $64,000 question. If the answer to that is yes, then local government could actually take the lead. It could wrest control of this from central government, who, I'm afraid to say, with the greatest respect to our colleagues in the DFT in the room, are demonstrably not frightfully impressed with the idea of national minimum standards. Now, if the answer to the $64,000 question, however, is no, then who have they got to blame? Nobody but themselves. Okay, they can say, well, the central government didn't do anything, so it can't be that big an issue. If it's not that big an issue, why do we all talk about it? So my view, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is something that could happen. My view is this is something that should happen. It would demonstrate that local government, which I believe in, I'm a former local government solicitor, can actually achieve the sort of things that local authorities used to achieve. Something big, something visionary. Ultimately, at no cost to the council taxpayer, to the citizens at large, and at a reduced cost to all of you, because of the economies of scale that will come with such a solution. It is something to think about. It is something I hope that you will discuss, and I would like to think that it is something that we will take forward. And even if it doesn't take off, at least I feel, you may disagree, I feel I've at least put forward a solution to the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
I've just got a question.
Yeah.
Discuss this before this session and following on from the last session with the IRL conference. And I've watched a lot of your lectures on the cross-border issue. And I've noticed that you've never mentioned Section 75(1)(a), Extended Provisions Act 1976. I suspect it's probably because it's perhaps not relevant, but we've done some work on it, and it came to our attention a couple of years ago that certainly the guys that wrote an article over 3 issues and saw transcripts of what it means, and we wondered what it means to you. Certainly, it seems to jar quite a lot with what it's part of the next door 75(2), which suggests that a journey can take place that passes through, starts, finishes anywhere in the UK, and we don't contest that at all. But the question that we've got is, does 75(2) mean that a driver can literally wait in the absence of a booking to attend anywhere he likes, with the prospect of maybe getting one in the next 10 minutes, half an hour, or even work completely remotely? And if that's the case, doesn't that jar with 75(1)(a), what's written there?
The driver can wait anywhere they like, for as long as they like, for a booking to come through from anywhere. That's what the courts have interpreted Section 75(1)(a), 75(2), and so on to mean. You can go to Hansard till you're blue in the face, but until the High Court, the Court of Appeal, say that's actually what the law says, and not what the law might have been thought to mean 40 years ago in some debate late at night in Parliament, I'm afraid that's it. And my response to those 3 articles is contained in the Journal of Licensing, available on the Institute of Licensing website, which, to my mind, is only the view of one jobbing solicitor, I accept that, explains why that activity is lawful. We can agree to differ, but that's it.
We can do, and we will do.
Okay.
I think what we might see, it's only it's crystal ball gazing here, but there are suggestions from the Shadow Transport Secretary that they may look at modelling on what Scotland did, which is allow vehicles to accept a booking that's not related to where they're licensed, but not allow them to wait outside of their licensing area. And we'd be quite happy with that.
Yeah, let's bring on vast amounts of fuel used for journeys to go back to somewhere you don't want to be, so you get a journey to somewhere you've got to go back to pick it up. Come on, we're trying to save the planet here. You know, disagree with me by all means, but for heaven's sake, let's not waste fuel. messing about on pointless journeys.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be pointless. Certainly, I've actually been driving for 29 years, and our interpretation, there's nothing to stop you if you're dropping off in another area, there's a job waiting, that you bring that job back. What it stops is you waiting speculatively for hours on end for something to come in. If you've got no business there, you go back. If you haven't got business there, you might have a job that's been allocated to you 2 hours later. You can wait for that job. But don't wait there speculatively, wait there because you've got business there.
Fine, we disagree. End of story. Sorry.
Okay, thanks very much, Jim. Any questions quickly from the audience? And it will have to be quick because we are running a little bit late.
I mean, sorry, say again.
Who's going to take this proposal to all the councils?
It's out there. What it needs, I believe, is a principal authority, an authority to say, actually, we think this is a jolly good idea, and we're prepared to offer ourselves as that principal authority. And if they do that, and that will be not only an administrative issue, it'll be a political issue, they then put out their feelers to see who else would like to join in. It, as I say, it lies with local authorities. This is nothing to do with government. It's nothing to do with the legislation. All the laws there to allow it to happen. It's down to local government to actually think, this is an idea, this is workable. And even if the principal authority picks up 2 authorities, you've then got at least 3 authorities working to common standards, which is 3 more than we've got now.